In the summer of 1836, on a quiet plantation in South Carolina, a widow named Eleanor Vance made a decision that would haunt her family for generations. She chose one enslaved man to keep a secret so dangerous, so unspeakable, that if it ever left her lips, the entire county would burn her name to ash. This is not a story about romance. This is not a story about mercy. This is the story of what a desperate woman will do to survive her own lie. Eleanor's husband, Charles Vance, was found dead in his study on a rainy April morning. The official record said fever. The doctor signed the paper without asking questions. But Eleanor knew the truth, because Eleanor had been standing in that room the night before. And Eleanor was the only one who saw what really happened. Charles Vance did not die of fever. He died of something Eleanor had done. She buried him with tears the whole county believed were real. She wore black for exactly the right number of weeks. She played the grieving widow so well that not a single neighbor suspected a thing, except for one man. A man who had been polishing the silver in the hallway outside the study the same night Charles died. A man who heard the argument. A man who heard the silence that came after. His name was Solomon. Solomon said nothing. Not that night. Not the next morning. Not for 3 full weeks. But Eleanor could feel his eyes on her every time she crossed the yard. And a woman who has just gotten away with something learns very quickly to read the silence of the one person who could destroy her. So Eleanor did what desperate people do. She brought him closer. She summoned Solomon to the study, the very room where her husband had drawn his last breath. The candle between them flickered as she spoke, her voice steady, rehearsed. "You'll be moving into the house," she told him. "Personal duties. My direct instruction only." Solomon didn't answer right away. He simply looked at her. And in that look, Eleanor understood that he already knew exactly why she was doing this. "I know what you think you saw," she said finally. "I don't think anything, ma'am," Solomon replied. "I know what I heard." The room went cold. Eleanor's hand trembled around the edge of the desk. For the first time since her husband's death, she was afraid of another human being. "Then you understand," she whispered, "why you and I are going to need each other." It was not kindness that moved Solomon into the big house. It was leverage. And leverage, in the hands of two people who despise each other, is its own kind of prison. Weeks passed. Solomon carried wood, mended fences, served at dinner, always near the widow, always within her sight, always watched by a household that had begun to whisper. The other enslaved workers noticed. The overseer noticed. Even Eleanor's own daughter, 12-year-old Margaret, noticed the way her mother's eyes followed the tall, quiet man who used to work the far fields. "Mama," Margaret asked one evening, "why does Solomon sleep in the house now?" Eleanor did not look up from her needlework. "Because I trust him," she said. It was the only true thing she had said in weeks. But trust built on a threat is not trust at all. It is a countdown. And every day that passed, Solomon carried a secret heavy enough to hang a white woman in 1836 Carolina. And Eleanor carried a fear heavy enough to make her capable of anything to keep it buried. One night, a traveling minister came through asking questions about Charles Vance's sudden death. Simple questions, routine questions. But Eleanor's hand shook pouring the tea, and the minister noticed. After he left, she found Solomon in the hallway and pulled him into the study, her composure gone. "He's asking questions," she hissed, "about Charles." "Then maybe it's time the truth came out," Solomon said quietly. Eleanor's face went white. "You wouldn't." "I never said I would," Solomon replied. "But I never said I wouldn't either." For the first time, Eleanor realized the terrible mistake she had made. She had not silenced her witness. She had built him into the one person with the power to end her, and given him a front-row seat to every secret in her house. That night, Eleanor made a decision that would seal her fate. If Solomon could not be trusted to stay silent forever, then he could not be allowed to speak at all. She summoned the overseer, a brutal man named Hargrove, and gave him instructions in a voice so calm it frightened even him. Solomon was to be sent away before dawn, sold south, to a plantation where no one would ever hear his story, where the truth about Charles Vance's death would die with distance. But Margaret, listening from the top of the stairs, heard every word. That night, thunder rolled across the Carolina sky as 12-year-old Margaret crept down to the servants' quarters, tears streaming down her face. She found Solomon already awake, already dressed, already resigned to whatever was coming. "They're going to sell you away," she whispered, "tonight, before sunrise." Solomon looked at the girl for a long moment. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because it's wrong," Margaret said. "All of it. What my mother did. What she's doing to you now." In that single moment, a 12-year-old girl showed more conscience than her mother had in 34 years of life. Solomon made his choice before the sun rose. He ran, not toward freedom alone, but toward the county magistrate, carrying with him the one thing Eleanor feared most, the truth, and a witness young enough that no one could accuse her of lying. By the time Eleanor realized Solomon was gone, it was already too late. The magistrate arrived at Vance Plantation 3 days later, not to arrest a runaway, but to question a widow. Margaret's testimony, quiet and unwavering, did what Eleanor had spent months trying to prevent. The full truth of Charles Vance's death was never fully settled in a court that had little interest in convicting a white plantation mistress. But the whispers that followed Eleanor Vance for the rest of her life were sentence enough. Neighbors who once dined at her table stopped calling. Invitations stopped arriving. The name Vance, once respected across the county, became a word spoken only in lowered voices. Solomon was never seen in South Carolina again. Some say he made it north. Others say the plantation he was resold to swallowed him whole, the way it swallowed so many others whose names history never bothered to record. But the locals who remained near the old Vance property told a different story for decades after. They said that on stormy nights, when the thunder rolled just right, you could still hear a woman's voice inside that empty house, whispering the same words over and over into the dark. "He knows, he knows, he knows." And if you ever find yourself on a quiet Carolina back road, past the old fields, past the crumbling gate, and you hear a woman's voice on the wind, asking herself the same question, some say it's best not to answer.